A man fought for 10 years, then spent 10 more unable to find his way home. And this story has been told for 3,000 years. Christopher Nolan is turning it into a film. And the fact that Nolan chose this project made me think, because this is the guy who made Dunkirk, who made Oppenheimer. Real, heavy, documented stories. So why now? Why a 3,000-year-old epic? I went back to the Odyssey looking for an answer. And what I found was this. What we've been told is only the surface of this story. Underneath, there's something much darker, much more human. If this channel interests you, consider subscribing now. We cover the strangest, darkest, least known corners of history. But first, Odysseus. Before we go any further, let's get one thing straight. This is not a fairy tale. Troy was real. On the western coast of modern-day Turkey, buried underground, archaeologists found 9 layers of cities built on top of one another. One of those layers dates back to the 12th century BC, and it shows fire damage, collapsed walls. A city that fell suddenly. Homer wrote about this war in the 8th century BC, but the events he described happened 400 years before that. A story passed by word of mouth for 4 centuries. Which parts are true, which parts were added, which parts grew in the telling, we can't say for certain. But at the core, there's something real. A real war, a real destruction, and probably a real man. Before the Trojan War began, Odysseus was the small king of Ithaca, a small island, no great empire. Not powerful like Agamemnon, not a legendary fighter like Achilles. But he was smart, and that, for him, was always enough. When the call to war came, Odysseus didn't want to go. According to legend, he faked madness. He went out to his field and started plowing with salt instead of seeds. The message was clear: I'm useless, leave me alone. But a man named Palamedes wanted to test him. He took Odysseus's infant son Telemachus and placed him directly in the path of the oxen. Odysseus stopped. He turned the animals away. His son was unharmed. He wasn't mad. He'd been caught. And so he had to go. Years later, during the war, Palamedes was executed, accused of communicating with the enemy. Forged letters had been found, and there was strong suspicion about who had planted them. But that's a different story. The Trojan War lasted 10 years. 10 years. The city walls could not be breached. The greatest warriors fell one by one. Achilles died. Ajax died. The war stalled. But Odysseus survived. Not because he stayed out of the fighting. He fought, and he fought well. But he was never at the front lines. He worked from the shadows, calculating, measuring every move. And finally, he proposed this: build a wooden horse, fill it with soldiers, stage a fake retreat, let the Trojans bring it inside, believing it's a trophy, a symbol of victory. Open the gates at night? Brilliant by any military standard. But in truth, this wasn't a battle plan. It was theater, a manipulation operation, and it worked. A horse was built. The chosen soldiers climbed inside. They waited in the dark, inside the wood, barely able to breathe. The Trojan army saw it as a challenge or a sacred offering and brought it within the walls. At midnight, the doors opened. Troy fell. The war ended. 10 years, closed in a single night. Everyone started heading home. Odysseus set sail too. Ithaca wasn't far. Under normal conditions, a few weeks at sea. It took 10 years. Shortly after setting out, a storm blew them off course, and they found themselves on the island of the Cyclopes, the island of one-eyed giants. And the most dangerous of them was Polyphemus, son of the sea god Poseidon. Odysseus was curious. He had a feeling about the place. He wanted to go inside, into the giant's cave. His men stopped him. Let's not. Something feels wrong. Odysseus didn't listen. They went in. The cave was enormous, but empty. Wheels of cheese, young lambs, wooden pails. No giant. Odysseus told his men, let's wait. This might be useful. When the giant returned, he sealed the cave. He saw them. And every day he ate a few of the men. There was no escape. The boulder blocking the entrance was so massive that the entire crew combined couldn't have moved it. One night, the giant asked, "What's your name?" Odysseus hid his real name. "My name is Odysseus," he said. Odysseus meant nobody. The giant heard this and moved on. It didn't register. But Odysseus had said it because he had a plan. In a corner of the cave, he'd found a large stake. They sharpened the tip, hardened it in the fire. That night, they drove it into the giant's eye. Polyphemus went blind, screamed, and the neighboring Cyclopes came running. "What happened? Who did this to you?" "Nobody," said the giant. "Nobody did this." The neighbors shrugged and turned back. "If nobody did it, it must be the gods," they said. The giant was blind but kept lifting the boulder every morning to let his sheep out to graze. Odysseus had his men tie themselves underneath the animals. The giant ran his hand over the sheep's backs, felt nothing, and the men, hanging beneath the animals, slipped out one by one. A perfect plan. Erase your name. Become invisible. Be nobody. The ships pushed off from shore. They put distance between themselves and the island. They were safe. And then Odysseus turned back and shouted, "It's me, Odysseus, son of Laertes, Odysseus of Ithaca." His voice could still be heard. Polyphemus prayed to his father Poseidon, "Don't let this Odysseus reach home for 10 years. Let him suffer. Let him be alone." And Poseidon heard. He had erased his name to save his life. He had become nobody. Everyone had made it out. All he had to do was stay quiet. But he couldn't. He had just seen that he could defeat even the gods. That's what his ego had realized. That moment, that shout, it was pride itself. And pride slammed the door on the road home. They reached the island of Aea, the island of the sorceress Circe. Circe was a goddess, but her appearance and voice were human. Like the Sirens, her voice drew people in. She brewed magical potions that could turn anyone who drank them into whatever animal she chose. The island was full of animals. All of them, it was said, had once been men. Odysseus sent some of his crew ahead to scout. Circe welcomed them inside. A beautiful voice, a warm greeting, enchanted wine. They ate, they drank, they let their guard down. Circe turned them into pigs. One man made it back. Circe had deliberately left him outside to carry the news, he told Odysseus. Odysseus strapped on his sword and set out. But before he'd even cleared the forest, Hermes appeared. He was holding a small plant called moly, white-flowered, black-rooted. The only thing that could break Circe's magic. Hermes gave it to Odysseus and warned him, "When you go inside, you'll drink the wine. The spell won't take hold. Circe will be stunned. The moment she's stunned, draw your blade. Walk toward her like you're going to kill her." She'll submit. Odysseus did exactly as he was told. Circe handed him the wine. He drank. She raised her wand. Nothing happened. Circe was in complete shock. This had never happened before. Odysseus drew his knife and moved toward her. Circe backed away. Then she said, "You must be Odysseus. Hermes told me about you. Come, put down the knife. Come to my bed." Odysseus agreed, but he made one demand first. "Give me my men back." Circe agreed. The men were freed. Odysseus and his crew stayed. 1 year. By the end of that year, his companions were heavy with homesickness. They went to Odysseus and told him it was time to go. Odysseus went to Circe and asked for her help getting home. Circe, despite not wanting him to leave, agreed to help. Circe told him, "If you want to get home, you must first go down to the land of the dead. There was a prophet there, Tiresias, a blind seer. He had been blinded while still alive. Some legends say because he had witnessed the secrets of the gods. But as his eyes closed, something else opened inside him. He could see the past, the present, and the future all at once. And only he could show Odysseus the way." Odysseus went down. The land of the dead was dark, silent, cold. Shadows drifted from place to place. They had shape but no substance. Tiresias came. He spoke. He described Poseidon's fury. He warned that the cattle of the sun, god Helios, must not be touched. He showed the way forward. Then the shadows began to close in. The men he had lost came. His fallen comrades from the fields of Troy. He saw them. And then he saw his mother. She had been alive when he left for war. She wasn't anymore. He tried to hold her. He reached out 3 times. 3 times his arms passed through nothing. Shadows cannot be touched. His mother said, "Son, what are you doing here? This place is not for the living." Odysseus had no answer. This was the price of going home. The road wouldn't continue until he had faced what he had lost. Until he had stood before those faces again, carrying that weight. He faced them, and he came back out. But the hardships weren't over. The Sirens. Creatures living on a rocky island in the middle of the Aegean. They sang, and every ship that heard their song veered toward the rocks against its own will. The Sirens' enchanting voices pulled them in. Human intention was simply overridden. No one had ever survived that sound. Odysseus wanted to hear it. He told his crew to plug their ears with beeswax. He had himself tied to the mast, and he gave the order. No matter how much I beg, no matter how much I scream, no matter what I say, do not untie me. If anyone tries to tie them up too. The ship approached. The song came. Odysseus went out of his mind. He pulled at the ropes. He screamed. He begged, "Untie me, untie me." No one heard. No one intervened. He had given the order himself. They passed through. Odysseus didn't destroy the desire. He knew he couldn't manage it in the moment, so he set up a barrier in advance. He recognized his own weakness and built a system around it. When temptation is that powerful, sometimes the only option is a physical constraint. Further along the route, a strait. On one side, Scylla, a 6-headed monster hiding on a high cliff. With every passage, it took a few men. Inevitably. Predictable. The loss was certain but contained. On the other side, Charybdis, a massive whirlpool. It opened and swallowed 3 times a day. If you got pulled in, there was no coming back. The ship would be gone. Everyone would be gone. There was no middle path. You had to pass through the strait, but both sides had a cost. Odysseus chose the Scylla side. He lost 6 men. They had names. They had been with him for years. Their screams were heard, but the ship couldn't stop. Could he have saved them? No. Did he save the rest of the ship? Yes. Life doesn't always offer 2 good options. Sometimes there's only the one that causes less damage. And carrying that damage quietly, especially when you know the names of all 6 men, that's what's heavy. The journey continued. The sacred cattle of the sun, god Helios, grazed on the island of Thrinacia. Tiresias had said it. Circe had said it. Both of them, the same warning, don't touch them. If you harm these cattle, you will never reach home. Odysseus relayed this clearly to his men. Don't touch them. This isn't advice. This is your life. The wind died. They couldn't leave the island. A day passed, a week, a month. The food ran out. The men were starving, exhausted, drained of hope. One day, Odysseus walked away from the shore, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. While he slept, his men slaughtered the cattle. They ate, they lit fires, they sang. Maybe there won't be punishment. Maybe the gods won't notice. Maybe this time will be different. It wasn't. Zeus sent a storm. The ship was torn apart. Everyone died. Only Odysseus survived. Up to this point, he'd had a plan for every danger, a way out of every dead end. This time, he had nothing. You can calculate everything. You can see every possibility. But when it comes to the weaknesses of others, their hunger, their desperation, you can't predict what they'll do. Sometimes you pay the price for it. And the price this time was losing his companions, being truly alone. After the ship shattered, Odysseus drifted at sea for days, alone, with no direction. And finally, he washed up on Ogygia, the island of Calypso. Ogygia was at the edge of the world. It appeared on no map. Those who arrived could never leave, because no one could ever find the way. Calypso was a goddess, daughter of Atlas. Her island was paradise. Everything was sufficient. Nothing was lacking. Food was plentiful, the climate was mild, the world was calm and predictable. And Calypso fell in love with Odysseus. For 7 years, she gave him everything. Her beauty, her love, her comfort. And she made him an offer. Stay. Be immortal. You will never grow old. You will never feel pain. Calypso truly loved him. She wanted to keep him beside her, to be with him until the end of time. Odysseus refused. There's a scene in Homer's text. Odysseus sits on the shore during the day and weeps. He stares at the sea. But at night, he sleeps beside Calypso. Reading this contradiction, a few things come to mind. Maybe Calypso had enchanted him. Maybe part of him wanted to stay, his pain and exhaustion holding him there. Maybe both were true at the same time. He wanted to leave, but no longer had the strength to go. Homer leaves the question open. Eventually, a decision was made on Olympus. The gods intervened. The order came to Calypso, let him go. Calypso freed him, but offered one last time, stay, be immortal. Odysseus answered, Penelope isn't as beautiful as you. A mortal woman can't compare to a goddess. But I want to go home, even if it means suffering. Even if I spend every day longing for it. Odysseus was set free on the sea, as a mortal man, one who would age and die, on a small raft. On Calypso's island, Odysseus had no past, no war, no men, no mistakes. Only today, and a today that stretched into forever. The thing that made him who he was, all that weight, all those scars, all that pain, wasn't there. And without it, neither was he. He chose a meaningful but finite life over an eternal one with no self left in it. Finally, he reached Ithaca, his home. 10 years of war and 10 years of wandering, 20 years in total. He didn't go directly to his palace. He put on beggar's clothes. No one recognized him. He went inside. He watched. The palace was full of suitors, men from wealthy families, from neighboring islands. They wanted Penelope's hand, and while they waited, they were consuming everything in the palace, the livestock, the wine, the food. Penelope had been holding them off for years. She would weave a shroud during the day and unravel it every night. I'm weaving a burial shroud for my father-in-law, she had told them. When it's done, I'll give you my answer. And every night, the threads came undone, for years, until someone noticed. But resistance couldn't last forever. Odysseus assessed who had stayed loyal, who had changed, who was dangerous. His son Telemachus had grown up, but didn't recognize him. There were a few faithful servants. He made contact with them. A plan was made. He announced an archery contest. Penelope brought out a bow, his bow, Odysseus's bow. Whoever could string and draw it would win her hand. The bow was exceptionally powerful. It hadn't been used in years. None of the suitors could draw it. The man in beggar's clothes asked for a turn. The suitors laughed. Odysseus took the bow. He strung it and notched an arrow. Then he turned to the suitors. He killed them all. It didn't take long. He had come home. But Penelope didn't believe him right away. To test him, she said, "Bring the bed here. I won't believe you until I see you in your own bed." The bed couldn't be moved. It was built around an olive tree still rooted in the ground. Only the two of them had ever known that. Odysseus answered correctly. And only then did Penelope embrace him. 20 years after leaving, the man who had come home was made to prove who he was. And yet, deep down, even he wasn't sure anymore. Every obstacle in this story represents something. The Cyclops is the narrow perspective that sees the world through a single eye, raw strength without depth. Winning isn't enough. How you handle victory reveals your character. Circe represents laziness, comfort, instinct, and the trap of ease. Tiresias shows that you cannot move forward without carrying the weight of what you've lost. The Sirens are temptation itself. They tell us what it means to resist the pull of desire. The choice between Scylla and Charybdis speaks to the burden of leadership. Making the right call for your people is sometimes the heaviest thing there is. The cattle of Helios show that you cannot place your trust in the weaknesses of others. And Calypso tells us that a short but meaningful life is worth more than an eternity without a self. Every stop is an internal trial, and Odysseus passed through each one, carrying damage, carrying lessons. He came home a different man. So why did Nolan choose this story? Maybe because Odysseus isn't a god. Powerful? Yes. Smart? Yes. But also someone who makes the wrong calls, who gives in to pride, who can't pull himself away from comfort, who has real flaws. And that's why he feels familiar. Because at some point, you found yourself in the Cyclops' cave, no way out, needing to become nobody. At some point, you stayed on Circe's island. You knew you had to leave, but you didn't. At some point, you let your ego win. You shouted your name when you should have been silent, and you paid for it. The Odyssey doesn't teach us how to be a hero. It shows us how to be human. And Homer wrote this story 3,000 years ago. But it's still being read, still being told, still being made into films. Because Odysseus' story keeps asking the oldest questions humanity has ever asked of itself. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. History is full of stories like this, mysterious, layered, and human to the bone. And I'll be here to tell them all. Care.